Hey guys, so if you have played Sparking Zero in Ranked at all, you have probably already run into a few Super Vegito players who love to spam Afterimage Strike. For those of you who don't know what that move is, first of all, congratulations. You are extremely lucky because apparently you haven't fought a single Vegito player yet. But it's basically a super move where once you activate it, you are basically untouchable for about 10 to 15 seconds and you automatically vanish against most attacks while doing that. It's a very annoying move to deal with because the user can just keep attacking you while you can't really counterattack, and of course people just love spamming that shit online because that's just the way these games work online. People just love using the most broken abilities in the game and just spam that shit over and over and over again. Super Vegito isn't the only character who can do this. There are also other characters like Videl, Roshi and Kid Goku, who a lot of people use in DP battles, but Super Vegito is by far the most annoying one because he's just the best character out of the whole lot. So yeah. This move is really cancerous, but thankfully there are a few ways to, well, sort of counter it, I would say, but it's more so just to deal with the move in general. And that's what this video is all about, basically. First off, I want to go over the general stuff that you have to keep in mind while fighting these Afterimage Strike users, and then I want to give you two distinct ways to deal with it, and then I will also tell you the way that I love to deal with them and the one that I had the most success with. So far, I'm of course running into a lot of Super Vegito players online. Duh, no shit. So are you probably. And I have about a 80% win rate against Super Vegito players because really once you have figured out how to deal with them, Super Vegito players become a lot less scary to face against. So yeah, let's just jump into it. So first of all, when you fight characters like Super Vegito who have Afterimage Strike, your number one priority should be to prevent them from using Afterimage Strike in the first place. As you may know, that move requires 2 to 3 skill bars, depending on the character, which means they can't use that move at the beginning of a fight, thank god. So what you want to do is to do as much damage as possible early on while trying to waste their bars as much as possible. So a lot of Vegito players love to just stand there and try to counter you in close combat. It gets really predictable because almost all of them play this way. And of course you can just punish them while they try to counter by either doing grab or a super move or something like that. But what I love to do actually, sometimes not always, is to use a charged up attack or a triangle move so they can actually counter that. But if they do counter it, they waste 1 bar of skill points, basically. And so if I'm in an advantageous situation, I just do that sometimes to make them waste their skill bars, just to prevent them from using Afterimage Strike. So that's of course already a really good strategy to keep their skill points as low as possible, but the thing is, of course, since you also take damage and get open to attacks, I wouldn't recommend doing that all the time, honestly. Also, what's really important is to play as aggressive as possible and just keep pressuring them. And this is especially important once they gather enough skill points to use Afterimage Strike. So what you don't want to do is once you see they have 3 skill bars ready to use the move, to just run away and wait for them to use it. No, what you should do is get even more aggressive and just basically keep attacking them, keep rushing them, just don't give them any chance to breathe, just keep pressuring them and just make sure they can't use that move. Just don't give them any time to use that move. Pressure them as much as possible. Not only does, like I said, not give them any time to use the move, it also makes them panic and then they just start playing even worse, you know? You will see this on the clip that I'm showing on the screen right now, but there I did exactly what I just told you. I just kept attacking over and over and over again, just didn't give them any chance to breathe, and even if they actually got away from me for a few seconds, they were so panicked actually that they just forgot to use the move in the first place. And that's basically what you want them to do. You want to get into their head and just make them scared to do anything. And that's of course the best way you can do this is to just don't let them breathe, don't let them get the chance to collect their thoughts and actually think about what they want to do next. So that's basically the first step, is to just not let them use that move in the first place. But of course, obviously you will never make it so they can't use that move throughout the entire fight, unless of course the player is just really bad. But because at some point they will get a lucky hit in on you that immobilizes you just long enough so they can actually use that move, especially because it doesn't really take that much time to activate to begin with. But of course, the longer you can prolong that activation, the better. But once they actually activate the Afterimage Strike, your number one priority should be to waste the opponent's time as much as possible, while also taking as little damage as possible. And there are multiple ways to do so. Whichever method you like to use really depends on what kind of player you are, and also what kind of player the opponent is and what their weaknesses are. You can put these methods into two categories basically. First of all, you can play either as defensively as possible, or you can play as offensively as possible. I'm gonna start with the defensive tools first because that's probably easier to understand and it's also probably the thing that you thought of immediately as well. Like I said, the goal is to waste their time as much as possible, and first off, you can just run away. There's no shame in doing that, especially if the opponent is nigh untouchable and they just love spamming that shit over and over and over again. Also, if the opponent starts comboing you, you can waste their time by using a counter. You just need to pay attention that if you do that, they will vanish the counter hit, and then they are just ready to attack you again. You can prevent them from hitting you by either countering again, or what I like to do is to just throw a Ki Blast, immobilize them a little bit, and then either do a grab or something to get them away from me, or just run away myself. And the reason I said Ki Blasts and grabs is because Afterimage Strike does in fact not work on grabs and Ki Blasts. They can still get hit by both of these moves even if they have Afterimage Strike active. So these moves are really good against Vegito players who love to use Afterimage Strike. What's also really helpful is the super counter or the Z counter, whatever people love to use, name that move. It's basically where if the opponent attacks you, you can whenever just start blocking that attack and push them away and then kick them away a little bit. It's the one that you do on PlayStation in standard controls with square and the analog stick upwards. It's a really good tool to deal with Afterimage Strike simply because first off you interrupt their combos, of course, which is really good, but also you actually push them away because Afterimage Strike, of course, does also not automatically vanish against that hit that you do against them to push them away. So it's a really good tool not only to interrupt combos, it's also a good way to just get them off of you for a few seconds and waste their time. The thing is about that strategy, it's not really that reliable just yet because that move is really hard to pull off, especially in online where the lag comes into play as well. So if you haven't already, I would strongly advise you to go into training mode and practice that shit as much as possible. It's not only helpful against Vegito players, it's just helpful in general. That's it for the defensive tools, now let's look at the offensive tools. You might be wondering why I'm even talking about offense in the first place, because the Vegito player is invincible basically while they activate Strike. But the thing is, first of all, like I said earlier, you need to have a good balance of offense and defense. If you just focus on running away the whole match, you just become really predictable and therefore easy to counter. And second of all, like I said earlier as well, Afterimage Strike doesn't work against every move in the game. Okay, so the first thing you can do is, and this of course works even better when you're on sparking mode, is to throw one punch and then immediately press the block button. So on PlayStation in standard mode that would be R1. And what that does is you throw a punch, they vanish with Afterimage Strike, but you immediately vanish behind them and you can just attack them again. That is of course a really good way to waste their time, but the thing is, keep in mind you need Ki for that. Also, if you play a lower tier character, I wouldn't really recommend doing that so much against Super Vegito players, because apparently Super Vegito wasn't broken enough already after Afterimage Strike. No, they also had to give them ridiculously fast combos, which means if you are a lower tier character, you can be sure that Vegito will just outmash you. And of course, that's not something you want to happen, because then you're just trapped into a combo and he just starts destroying you. So don't be too reckless by doing that. I would really only recommend that when you have characters like Gogeta or Full Power Gion or stuff like this, you know, characters on that caliber. And of course, if the opponent doesn't have Super Vegito, but stuff like Videl, Kid Goku or Roshi, that strategy also works a lot better, because their combos of course aren't as broken as Vegito's are. That's one method to deal with Afterimage Strike. But the other one I like way more. It's the one that actually I use all the time against Super Vegito players, and it's to just do this. So yeah, basically you just spam the ever-living shit out of them by using Ki Blasts and mixing them up with the occasional grab. Like I said earlier, Afterimage Strike does not work against Ki Blasts and grabs, they can still get hit by that, and this is basically just abuses that to the maximum. And there's like no better way to waste their time than by throwing Ki Blasts at them. This of course also works better if you're on Sparking mode, because you can just infinitely spam Ki Blasts. But if you play smart, you don't necessarily have to be in Sparking for that. What I like to do is, and I show this on screen as well, is to enter Sparking mode, start spamming Ki Blast at them, and while I do that, I try to move my character either behind them, so they eat extra damage and they can't reflect the Ki Blasts, or I move towards them, so I can get close enough to just grab. Both things work really well, of course. And you can also really rack up a ton of damage against Super Vegito players this way, even while they have Afterimage Strike active. Just look at the clip that I'm showing on the screen and just see the damage that the Super Vegito player takes. It's actually a lot. And they can't really do anything against that, because it's really hard to get out of Ki Blast spam once the opponent just starts spamming at you, you know? You just have to make sure they run out of a Ki, and that's not really a factor when they are in Sparking mode, you know? There is one way to get out of the Ki Blast spam, but I'm not gonna say what that is, simply because I don't want to give Super Vegito players any tips. I just want them to suffer before using their character, really. Also in these clips I'm using Golden Frieza because he's my main, and because his Ki Blasts are really fast, so this strategy works really well with him. But you don't necessarily have to use a character like him. You can just use normal characters with normal Ki Blasts as well, and it works just fine as well. In fact, actually let me show you a really super degenerate version of that strategy. So here I am using 4 power Jiren. Again, I spam the Vegito player with Ki Blasts and keep them stun locked, and I also pay attention to the time that has elapsed since they used Afterimage Strike. And once I'm confident that it's no longer up, I can just use my ult, which I'm doing just here. And he can't really do anything against that, because again he's stun locked, he can't really move, and he can't block either. And yeah, he just eats a lot of damage and dies, basically. Because apparently we really needed broken nonsense like unblockable ultimates in this game, because apparently there wasn't enough broken bullshit in the game as it is. So yeah, this is how I deal with Super Vegito players who spam Afterimage Strike online. If you have any more tips against that, feel free to post them in the comments below, and I guess have fun making Super Vegito players' lives absolutely miserable, because they deserve it, really. See you all in the next video. Bye!